So welcome, and I wanted to hand it over to Ms. Michelle Silovich, who is the Executive Director of the Gulf Archaeological Research Institute, and they are the people that did the excavations at Fort King. So, Michelle, take it away.
Well, like she said, I'm Dr. Michelle Silovich. I wanted to just take a moment to tell you a little bit about Gulf Archaeology, what we do, what our history's been, and then I've got Dr. Jason Lundick, who designed the exhibit, and a couple of other staff that I'd like to introduce. But first, thank you so much for coming out. It's been a wonderful project, a couple years in the making. So Gulf Archaeology Research Institute, we're a small not-for-profit organization. We've been located in Central Florida for the last 25 plus years now. We work mostly with local communities that are interested in preserving their history. We're mostly grant funded and donation based, so pretty much everything that we do, we bring the money in to find ways to protect and preserve Florida's vanishing history. I learned yesterday that 896 people a day move to Florida, so that's a lot of construction and a lot of threatened archaeological sites. So we're one of the only not-for-profits in Florida actively preserving these sites before they're lost forever. We've been working at Fort King for the last 20 years. Gary Ellis, our founder and director emeritus, was instrumental in locating Fort King way back in the early 90s, and we've been working there ever since. We have a 20-year history with the site, and we've now become kind of the leading experts on Second Seminole War in Central Florida. We've excavated a number of these sites throughout Florida. So it's just been really interesting to tell the story of Fort King. I find Fort King really, really fascinating. It's this one building that had so many different meanings. For the soldiers, it symbolized safety and home, and for the Seminoles, it was an invasion and an attack and a way of life that was being threatened. So we have this one story with 2, 3, 4 multiple sides. So we were hoping to kind of explore that a little bit in this exhibit. So we've got some actual artifacts that we've found over the years. We've got some wonderful reenactor clothing to give you an idea of what that would have looked like whole. But let me just take a moment. I want to introduce my staff. Oh, before I do that, so we also are planning, like I said, we're grant and donation based. All those grants that we get, we need cash match funding to keep getting them. So we're thinking March 23rd. It's still a little bit in the works, but if you sign up for our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, come get a business card and send me an email. But mid-March to late March, I think the 23rd, we're going to do an evening at Fort King as a fundraiser. We'll do speeches kind of under the stars in the fort one evening, wine and cheese. So we really hope you can come and at least just enjoy the beautiful evening where it should be really, really fun. So stay tuned for more information about that. But like I said, we have Gary Ellis, our director emeritus. We have Ken Nash, our director of physical sciences and climatology. Sean Norman, our assistant director. And Dr. Jason Lundick, one of our research associates. So I'll turn it over to him and let him tell you a little bit about the process of designing the exhibit.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you all very much for coming. Did everyone enjoy the catering? Yes. Okay, yeah, a round of applause for the catering. A lot of love and work went into that. That was Laredo's Kitchen, which is on Silver Springs Boulevard.
Oh, yeah.
And so, yeah, that's actually the oldest restaurant in Ocala. Well, oldest family-run restaurant in Ocala, so it's an institution. What I would like to say is basically just to give you a perspective into the exhibition and the creation process. Because people, a lot of times they'll see a piece of artwork or they'll see a display and they just think that it magically pops out of the ground like mushrooms or something. But it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of dedication, it takes strain, projects like these can ruin friendships, change careers, cause divorces, it's those sorts of things. Like, trust me, man, my cat got so mad at me some nights. Oh, a lot of cat treats had to make up for my late nights. But actually, I myself have been working on this exhibition for over 2 years. I've gone through 3 interns on this project. I think each one of them probably went a little insane. But the process has actually been very organic and very healthy, because one of the things, I'm a research archaeologist and I specialize in analyzing cultural interactions within colonial environments and how discrepant communities, discrepant power structures result in the creation of social change and development in imperial environments. So yeah, try to bring that up casually at a cocktail party. I just usually say I'm an archaeologist and then whatever. Anyways, so when I was thinking about, because, you know, the exhibition embryonically just came up, hey, you know, we've been doing work at this site, let's do an exhibition on the Gulf Archaeology Research, or on Fort King. Fine. That's like saying, let's make a movie. What's the point of the exhibition? Like, why, what is the story? What's the narrative? What's the actual, like, tale that we're trying to tell? What's the picture that we're trying to paint? You know, what's the character arc that we're doing that actually makes the exhibition have any sort of sense? Because if you just have an exhibition which is pretty stuff on a wall, okay, yeah, it's a nice exhibition with pretty stuff on a wall, but that's not doing my job. You know, my job is to educate, tell a story, and use the tools that are available to me to give you the best, most quality education that I possibly can. So, speaking with researchers at the Institute and also interns and random people at bars, you know, well, I mean, you know, just, you have to talk shop, you know, you brainstorm, you get different perspectives. And actually, Michelle was bringing up very well, was what we saw is that Fort King has multiple stories and points of view of how different groups of people interacted with it. And this works really well with my research perspective of discrepant communities within colonial environments, because this is the Seminole War period. These are discrepant communities within a colonial environment. So it really worked well for my theoretical framework of how I approach research anyways. So you'll notice that there's 3 bays in this exhibition, and we have large text panels. I mean, I told you I do research. There's a lot of text panels there, so bring your reading glasses. But it's broken into 3 different groups of people that we try to analyze their perspective of how they interacted with this site. I believe the first one is U.S. soldiers. I mean, actually, Michelle can tell you a lot more about what the U.S. soldier experience was, so I won't babble on too much. But obviously, there was a military component to the fort. I mean, it's a fort. I mean, there's a military component. Secondly, U.S. settlers, because of course there were people coming down into Florida homesteading. There was cattle ranching was a big thing, and you know, of course, this is before the age of air conditioning. So, frankly, in my point of view, the people that were settling in 19th century Florida were a little kooky. But you know, they came down and, you know, hey, free land and let's do it. The third group is the Seminole Tribes people. Now, the Seminole Tribe is a tribe that was created in historical memory. It's what we call ethnogenesis, which is the creation of a people. The Seminole Tribe was coalesced through different. Well, actually, Gary he knows this stuff. Like I'm the theory research guy. He actually knows what he's talking about. But different groups of Seminoles, and actually even escaped slaves. Also played a role in the formation of the tribe, and that was one of the things that was leading to conflict with the U.S. government and with settlers, is because slaves were running away. I mean, you have to think, we always think of the Underground Railroad going south to north, but if you're in servitude in, say, Georgia, it's a lot easier to run down to Florida than to try to make it all the way up to Canada, doesn't it? So, although still, there's no air conditioning, so I don't know. Like, it's, you know, I'm not saying why people made their decision. Oh, true. Heat or cold, you know. That's, I mean, I myself, I can always put more clothes on. There's only so naked I can be, you know. So, but anyways, so that was causing conflict because, of course, these plantation owners, well, they wanted their slaves back. And the Seminole Tribe really didn't care too much about what the U.S. government and U.S. settlers said, because it's like, well, they have their own entire cultural thing going on. So I tried to get perspective on each one of these groups and try to, like, give you a narrative, you know, and I'm not trying to tell you. I mean, one of the other things that I think is really important when you're talking about research and education is a good teacher tells you what to look at, but not what to see. You know, I want to put the material in front of you, but, you know, don't want to cram my opinion into your head. I want to give you the tools to approach it as, I mean, actually, I think, no, there are some kids in the room, but I was going to say, like, most of the people here are adults. I trust your rational abilities to make decisions and interpret data, so that's also kind of the perspective that we go through. As far as the objects in the cases, that'll be a lot easier to talk to you about, like, in front of the objects. Like, you know, I don't want to say, like, oh, well, there's the Andrew Jackson medal that you can't see right now because it's over there. So after this talk, you know, you can harass any of us from the Gulf Archaeology Research Institute, and we will tell you what we know. I would say there's an artist in the room. Is that gentleman over there? I keep calling him out, Mr. DeBerry, and he did 3 pieces for the work for Fort King, or for this exhibition, and yeah, so you can harass him. I'm sorry, I called him out. One thing I'm going to close up because we all want to look at the stuff and drink wine. But Michelle did bring up that it's a nonprofit organization. This, like I said, this took me over 2 years. And frankly, I don't get paid unless there's donations. Like, my work doesn't really work well with grants. Like, one of the projects that I'm working with is associative reasoning and the effect of neurobiology in the selection of object classes. Now, try to put that into a grant. No, that's too theoretical. You know, that doesn't make sense. So please, you know, you can talk to Michelle. She knows all that sort of business administration stuff. But you know, we're giving you our work, our labor, and our passion for free. We're taking care of the community, and the community needs to take care of us. So thank you all very much for coming, and you know, enjoy.
Okay. I want to let our director, Emeritus, say a few words, but I just want to say thank you again. A round of applause to Jeremy and his beautiful artwork. The big banner out front is his work. I think we zipped in and zipped out, but also all of the staff and volunteers at Fort King who are still out there interpreting. So we hope after here today you go over there. They're having a movie in the park at 7, so bring your blankets and enjoy it over there. But they've been amazingly supportive of all our work here, and we love partnering with them. But with that being said, I'll let Mary say just a few words, and then we'll go back to cocktails and hors d'oeuvres. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming out this evening. I'm sort of the closer tonight, so somebody lock those doors. You know? Not getting out. I grew up without air conditioning.
Hey, sorry, mate.
And part of this perspective and part of the product of historical and archaeological inquiry is determining the human condition. So places like Fort King, which become communities through time, they pass through from forts to communities, and later it becomes Ocala, right? Right. And so we have a continuing community here. And what makes this Fort King project so very, very important is that it started with an idea of preserving part of it by the Daughters of the American Revolution back in the 20s. And then over time, people remember the fort. The community remembered the fort. And as new people moved in, so the legend goes. It's located on the hill on the east side of Ocala. We had a wonderful family that in later years actually took care of the site to the degree that we could recover what we have been able to recover today from the site. And then moving on from there, in the spirit of the community, we had a coalition between the newly formed organization, the Fort King Heritage Association, the City of Ocala, and the county, and everyday citizens who, through a grant that was wonderfully gotten and fortuitous for the time, that was able to be matched so that we could get to the point where we have conducted several years, well, about 20 years worth of archaeology, and then been able to save most of the fort in situ. That's a fancy word that it's where we left it, or where they left it. And you have a reconstructed fort to boot. I don't know that I could count on one hand the places in our country where you get your cake and you get to eat it too. And this was a community effort. So while it took a lot of heartache, well, not on my part, but on the part of some, we arrived at a position where now we're able to bring a lot of information to light each year. And this program at Fort King the development of the fort site will continue over the next couple of years. And it'll still be a community project, because if it isn't, it'll fail. You follow me? So you've been a good community up to this point. And I'd like to exhort you to continue to be a good community and provide support when and where you can. This is a meaningful thing in an era where we can't count on governments to save things. We have to count on ourselves, don't we? It's us, and it's our heritage. So you'll want to think about what's coming down the pipe, be apprised of the news and the various groups working at Fort King, and try to do your very best. And in a sense, if you were a soldier, I'd say, please do your duty as a citizen. As to us, we are not-for-profit. That's why I say lock those doors. We are not-for-profit. We do sing for our supper. But unlike university institutes and universities that have departments that work in archaeology, we have one of the lowest overheads possible. If you're a business person out there, a low overhead and a clean operation and a solid product at the end is something you want to invest in. Am I correct?
Yes.
All right. And so when you invest in us in large or small ways, it doesn't have to be very big. We'd like it to be giant, but when you invest in us, you have to know that every penny is accounted for, goes back into programming, and there are other communities much smaller than yours that have cultural and historic and archaeological resources that are very important to them, and they have no way to protect them. And the services that we provide, pro bono at first, if you all know what that means, we're giving our time and the time of our young professionals, and we have a complete professional staff. We can go in and help them get started and show them the various steps. Now down the line, the FKHA, raise your hand, David. David's the current president of the Fort King Heritage Association. Folks are going to be visiting Fort King to learn how to do what you have done here. It's almost a miracle. There's no place else for those people to go, and there are few providers of services at our level that can bring this information out to light